Today, I'm going to show you how to build a $1 million health coaching business within the next 12 to 18 months. And it's probably not what you think, because I'm not going to talk about how you should be posting, the type of content you should create, the types of ads you should be running, none of that stuff. I'm actually going to show you the math. I'm going to show you specifically how to reverse engineer your dream and how to make a reality on a daily basis. Uriel Kim here, CEO and founder of Healthpreneur. We help health professionals and coaches build scalable coaching businesses that transform more lives. And today I'm going to give you an example of exactly how I would help you if you were a client of mine coming to me with a business portfolio of numbers or a pipeline or a funnel, and you're not quite sure how to take it to the next level. This is what I do on a daily basis with our clients, and I'm going to walk you through the thinking and the math behind how to do this. Business is math and psychology. That's it. I'm not going to talk too much about the psychology in this video. I'm going to focus a little bit more on the math. If you're not a numbers person, well, cool. You can stay stuck where you are, or you can learn and lean in about this stuff and recognize how this will unlock everything you ever possibly wanted in your life. So I've got some stuff I'm going to be sharing with you on the screen, and I'm going to walk you through this. Now, before I dive into this, it provides a little bit of, I got to provide a bit of context for what these numbers, this is a critical number sheet that we use with our clients. What is it even referencing? Like what type of funnel? How are people coming in? So let me quickly just start there. So what we help our clients build and deploy and install in their business is a really simple 4-step client acquisition system called the Perfect Client Pipeline. It's how we've built our business from 0 to multiple 8 figures, and it's how we've helped thousands of clients build 6, 7, and 8-figure coaching businesses online, so they're not having to rely simply on posting and hoping people will fall in their lap. So there's 4 steps. First step is called predictable prospecting. And this is where we run ads on social media with the right type of messaging. That's where the psychology comes in to speak to the right people you want to bring into your world. From the ad, people click on a link and they go to the second step, which is what we call teach to sell, which is essentially a 24/7 evergreen webinar or masterclass that, again, has to be constructed in a very specific fashion to move the right people to the next step, which is step 3, we call ask and assess, which is simply to fill out a small application with the right types of questions and to ensure that they're qualified to speak with you so they can go from the application to booking a time in your calendar. And the 4th step is what we call coach to close, which is you having a conversation with the prospect to see if there's a mutual fit for you guys to work together. Sounds simplistic, I know, but here's why most people on their own are not going to make this happen, because of what I'm going to share with you in this video. Okay, so that's the foundation. That's the pipeline that we would help install into your business. And obviously you'd be selling a program to clients for 3, 4, 5 or more thousands of dollars to help them transform their health. In this video, I'm going to assume you're charging $3,000 for a coaching program. Okay, we'll start there. And here's what this would look like. So when our clients deploy their pipeline, they would have access to this type of sheet. We call it the critical numbers dashboard. And I'll just zoom in a little bit here. And I'm going to walk through some numbers with you, okay? Okay, so let's just play with this. So let's just assume that I'm going to just fill out one of these weeks, but it doesn't mean you have to spend this amount of money in 1 week, okay? So we're going to put down $2,000 of ad spend. We got 1,000 clicks. So therefore we are paying $2 a click. Leads will be, let's just say 400. And as for paying $5 a lead, our opt-in rate is 40%, which is pretty generous, to be honest. On that, 400 leads, let's say that we got 20 calls booked. So you're paying $100 a call. Your lead to call book ratio is 5%. If you don't know what some of these terms mean, don't worry about it. Obviously you would as a client, but just stick with me for a second. Calls conducted on the 20, let's say that some people canceled, some people no-showed, but you had a 75% show-up rate, 15 people conducted or calls conducted, and on that you enroll 5 clients, which is a close rate of 33%. I'm just going to put that in there. Your cost per enrollment in this scenario is $400 and you're collecting $3,000. Okay, so 5 times 3 is $15,000. And so your profit loss on this is $13,000 profit. Now this is, I'm just going to start there. Okay. So if you came to me with these types of numbers, I'd be like, cool, can we just increase the ad spend? Because where do you want to go from here? And let's just say that you came in with that, or like, your numbers started to look like that. On average, our clients this bottom number, the ROAS, is 314% across all of our clients. Okay, so they invest $1, they make $3.14 in return on average. Pretty amazing. I don't know about other investments you have in life. I'm certainly not seeing 314% outside of my own business. So once you have some numbers in your business, in your pipeline, then we can start to look at, and again, I would make sure that we have just a good volume of data. Like if you came in and said, I've got 1 call booked, 2 calls booked, you don't have enough data. But I'm assuming, let's say we spent $2,000, and I'm just putting this in 1 week, just so I don't have to replicate this across the columns. And all we're doing here is we're saying overall we spent $2,000. So I'm just putting it in 1 week for simplicity, okay? Now, the cool part about this is that then we can start to project. Where do I want to be in the future? So we have a program price of $3,000, and your book to close rate, if we go back here, was right here, 25%, okay? Now let's actually, we'll play with that for a second. So 25% means you need 4 calls booked to enroll 1 client. Now the book to close rate is one of the most important numbers I look at because it incorporates close rate and show rate. So if your show rate is terrible and your close rate is terrible, this number will be very low. And I'll show you how this impacts a lot of things in your business in just a second. And cost per call booked, we go back here, we're paying $100. Okay? So those are things that we know from our critical numbers sheet. Those are the numbers that we've identified already. So you're running ads, you have the numbers coming through. So the next question is, well, where do you want to be? Where do you want to be in a couple months from now? And let's say we wanted to shoot for $50,000 per month. Now everything else populates itself. You would need 17 enrollments per month from 67 calls booked, ad spend of just around $6,700, and your cost to acquire a client is only $400. You're paying $400 to acquire a client that's going to pay you $3,000. We'll do that forever, right? So that's a pretty good scenario. Now, on a daily basis, here's what this works out to be. You're spending $222 on a daily basis to make $50,000 in revenue, and your profit, cash in bank, is $43,000 and change for a 750% return on ad spend. Now, pretty good, right? So what happens if these numbers are a bit different? Well, let's say that you are paying, if we go back here, and let's say that on 400 leads, you only booked 10 calls. And all of a sudden now your cost per call booked is $200. Let's have a look at what that looks like. So if you're paying $200 a call booked, now you have to spend twice as much for the same revenue level. Therefore, your profit gets cut in half. So remember, just watch these bottom numbers down here as I go from $200 back to $100. Okay, so our profitability is cut not quite in half, but significantly, just based on the fact that we're paying twice as much for a call booked. Now, what if your show rate was less than 75%, or what if you were just not good on the phone with people and your book to close rate was 15%? Now, watch what happens. The ad spend required, the number of calls booked required goes up dramatically. You need way more at-bats to enroll 17 clients. Remember, before, you only had to have 67 calls booked for the month. But at 15%, you need 111 calls booked per month. So if you're a busy practitioner or a coach who doesn't have all day to spend on the phone with people, this is important. So why would this number be so high? Well, maybe your selling skills are not great, so you're not that effective at enrolling clients on the phone. This is why one of the most important skills we help our clients build is their ability to sell. And we help them do so in a way that doesn't feel salesy or douchey or slimy. It's essentially having a coaching conversation, which is why we call it coach to close, to move the right people over the line so they can actually transform their health. So this becomes really fun. This is something that I do personally. This is something we do with our clients to say, like, where do you want to be in a couple months? Because now that we have a good amount of data to begin with, and just to be clear again, when I'm looking at our clients' numbers, they would have all of these weeks filled out, right? I'm not starting to make big decisions based on 1 week of data unless the week of data had a lot of data, okay? Most of our clients don't spend $2,000 in 1 week in week one. They're starting out with a couple $100, okay? But I'm just putting everything into one column here for simplicity, but over time, these numbers start to add up, And once you have a good track record of data, we look in the year to date over here. Cool, now we can look at, roughly what we're paying for a call booked over several weeks, a bunch of different ads that we've run, and we can start to approximate how we can start to scale based on our current data. So this is why I call this the game plan. If you wanted to shoot for $500,000 a month, right, this is what it looks like. Obviously, you'd probably need a bit more of a team at that point, but this gives us a lot of clarity about what needs to happen in order for things to move forward. Now, 17 clients enrolled, check out what happens if we increase the price to 4,000. Now we only have to enroll 13 clients. So if we go back to the initial book to close rate of 25, we had initially, remember on the $3,000 price point, we needed 17 clients enrolled, 67 total calls booked. But here's why I think it's important to remember that your business should be boring. You should be focused on this like a maniacal scientist. Not you have to put in 20 hours a day, but we help our clients do this in a couple minutes a day. Like it's just about making 1% improvements. Because if you move your price from $3,000 to $4,000, boom, you need fewer clients enrolled. If your book to close rate is 25%, you need fewer calls booked to make those enrollments. If your cost per call booked goes down to 150, you need less ad spend for those enrollments and your profitability goes up. So how does all of this start to come together? Number one is we get our cost per call booked down by improving our messaging and how we articulate our offer. And that comes down to how we're presenting our ads, how we're putting them into the marketplace. The book to close rate also is impacted by that because if you're getting a lot of no-shows, your messaging on the front end is probably attracting the wrong type of people who aren't committed to doing anything about their situation. So we can work on messaging there, and book to close rate also incorporates close rate. So if your close rate is really low, then we go to work on your selling skills to improve that. So your close rate improves to whatever, to a higher number. And obviously program price, it's a mindset more than anything. If you are afraid that people are not going to spend $4,000, that's just between you and you. People, there's no difference if you charge $3,500 or $4,000. There's no difference. Do you really think someone's going to be like, well, if it was $3,500, I'd definitely say yes, but $4,000, that's way out of my ballpark. Not at all. Not at all. I mean, maybe if you went from $3,500 to $35,000, it's a bit of a different story. But the reality is pricing is 100% mindset. And what our clients notice is when they start increasing their prices, they start dealing with the same stuff. Some people say yes, some people say no. So say, well, why don't we just keep going? And you'll hit a point where you're like, cool, I feel very confident at this price point, and I feel that's a good trade for the value I'm providing. So that's the game plan. Now, one of the things I like to do here is to look at projections, because this is actually really useful for you to understand as the business owner. Now, to simplify what I'm showing you here is I'm assuming, and by the way, what I'm showing you here is like, these are dashboards that I've created for our own business that we use internally. Obviously, our numbers are a bit different. So if your book to close rate is 20%, right? And the example we just looked at, let's just take this to 20%, okay? And your cash collected per enrollment. So here we said your price was, let's just say 3,000. Actually, let's say 4,000. Okay. You charge $4,000, but not everyone pays in full, right? Some people are on payment plans, etc. So here we're saying if the average amount you collect per enrollment is $1,500, some people pay in full, some people pay payment plans, but when you average it out, you're collecting, when someone says yes, $1,500 on the spot. Now, what this does is this matrix will show you how many calls per day you can book based on these numbers. Because what happens as you run ads is you have to make sure you have cash flow to pay for those ads. And the beautiful thing about advertising is you throw it on a credit card, and that credit card doesn't have to be paid off for about 30 days in most cases. Or unless you have an Amex, you can just run the balance and pay a bit of interest for as long as you want. But let's say you don't want to do that. So here's what this matrix means. So we have daily ad spend on the top, and then cost per call booked down here. The green, all of this, shows you if you had this daily ad spend and you paid any of, $50 or $100 per call booked, you would be ROI positive, so return on ad spend positive by more than 3 to 1 within 30 days, or more or less immediately based on cash collected here. So what that means is that you could book, so let's say that you had $50 per call booked, you're paying that, and you are spending $700 per day in ads, you would be booking 14 calls per day. Problem though, you individually can't hold or host or run 14 sales calls per day, right? Unless you're from outer space. And so what you'll notice is all of these cells that have borders around them are essentially saying you as an individual, okay? You as an individual, this is the number of calls you can host on a daily basis. And I've gone to a maximum of 6, because when I was doing this on my own, 6 calls was pretty much the ceiling of what I could hit. And I did that for quite some time. So although here you could book 14 calls a day, you can't even run 14 calls a day. So that's why here, at this point, you probably need 1 or 2 other people in your team to help you run sales calls. We'll put that on the back burner for a second. So what this shows you is that, let's say, if we go back to here, you notice that you're paying $200 a call booked, okay? And that's your average. If we go to 200 right here, okay? What this tells us is that, this should probably be yellow as well. What this tells us is that on a 600-day ad spend, you would be able to have 3 calls conducted, and on 20% of that, so 20% of 3 is not even 1 person, but within 30 days, you would be return on ad spend positive by more than 1. This is actually about 1.75 in this case, relative to a cost per call of $200. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. Now, the reason this stuff is red down here, this actually, a couple of these might be yellow, to be honest, as I'm looking at this, is that you're simply not going to be enrolling anyone if you spend $100 and your cost per call booked is 200. Like you'll have 1 call booked every other day, right? If you're at 200 spend per day and your cost per call booked is 200, you'll have 1 call booked, but at 20%, you have to have 5 calls booked to enroll 1 client, okay? So hopefully this is making a little bit of sense, but I'm sharing this because this is how I start to work with our clients through how they can start to see the future. So if you know, for instance, let's play this back. Let's say that again, we were at 20 calls on 400 leads. So your cost per call booked is $100. So that takes us right here in this row. You're paying $100 a call booked. Now, if you are at a maximum of 6 calls per day in the course of 1 month, that is what? 180 calls, 6 times 30. But let's just say you want to take a couple of days off, right? So let's just say it's 150 calls per month. You have them booked. It's not that they're necessarily conducted. You might have no-shows and cancellations. But let's just go back to the game plan for a second. So we know that to make $50,000, program price is $4,000. Now, just to clarify, here, this is based on immediate cash collected. Okay, so that's the only difference between this and the game plan. If I change this number, the monthly number changes a little bit the enrollments required changes a little bit, but I'll keep this simple. So this is 63 calls required to hit this number, but you can handle 150 calls based on the previous matrix we just looked at. So let's just kind of like take this revenue target higher. This is 125. Okay, so let's take this to about 120,000. You, as a solo maniac, over the next couple months are like, you know what? I'm going to go all in. I'm going to take as many calls as I can. You can handle 150 calls booked per month. We know that based on the data, we have a 75% show rate. Okay, so you're not hosting 150 calls, but it's going to be about 120-ish. Your book to close rate is 20%, which means 1 out of 5 calls enrolls. That means you have 30 enrollments required, or 30 enrollments which is going to give you $120,000 a month contract value. Okay? That's well above $1 million in revenue. Once you have data for your pipeline, and honestly, if you run a perfect client pipeline, cool. If you have any other type of funnel, make sure you're breaking down the numbers like this, because what you want to be looking for are the constraints. Because if all of this looks good, I'm like, cool, let's go. And then we can start to forecast where we want to be. We can look at what is the maximum number as a solo entrepreneur you can take in terms of calls booked in a way that's going to be ROI positive. And then we just go. But sometimes life throws you curveballs. And let's say things don't work out just like this. Let's just take this down to a different level. Okay, let's say your cost per lead is $10 a lead, which is a little bit on the high side. And you've only booked like 5 calls. And now what we have is we got a lot of red. And so if we took these numbers into the game plan, they would not look very good. If you wanted to make $50,000, $4,000 of the program, your book to close rates is a little bit off here. This would have to go down a little bit because we've only got 5 calls. And let's just say 1 person. So again, 20%, but your cost per call booked is $400. See, this changes the game a little bit. Notice how, look at the profitability down here. Watch how this changes. All of a sudden this changes, but you're still 2 to 1, right? You spend you spend $25,000 to make 50. So you're profitable $25,000 still, but it's less efficient. And so this is the game of business. It's to always be looking at where's the constraint. How do I fix these numbers? If my cost per lead is too high, well, I got to fix some stuff, right? Maybe my opt-in page is the opt-in rate's too low, or perhaps the cost per click is too high, because we want to get these numbers within a sweet spot before we can scale. And so I share this with you because business should look like this. If your business has no semblance of what I'm sharing with you, please stop, put together some basic dashboards based on your business model so you can actually track what's going on. Keyword here is business model. A business model is how you attract and convert clients and deliver results to them. And that should be able to be broken down into a dashboard or spreadsheet like this that gives you metrics at every stage of the game. And if you don't have this, then you're throwing stuff at the wall and hoping things are going to turn out. Oh, I get a lot of my people from referral. Cool, but you have no control over that. When you have a dashboard like this, and when you can press go on your Facebook ads and increase the budget or add more ads or pull different levers, you have 100% control of your business. You have a very large degree of predictability because you know if these numbers hold up, this is what the outcome is going to be. 50,000 revenue, 25,000 profit. It's like, cool, well, if we go to work on our messaging and improve things and we get the cost per call booked down to 100, we make way more profit. Cool. What do I have to do to improve that? I'm going to go to work because I want to make 4 times more profit than I would otherwise if I were paying a fortune for this. But the problem that I see so often is that if we have a business consult with a prospective client, none of them have numbers like this. So therefore they have no data. They have no idea what's going on. They're flying a plane with no dashboard. And they're simply looking at the ground and they're like, I think I'm okay. What happens when you run into clouds or fog? You're screwed. And the problem with business is that you're literally flying in fog all the time, unless you have a dashboard of numbers that shows you where you're going, okay? So this is how I look at how to take a business from wherever it is to more than $1 million. And the cool thing about this is that you can get these $50,000 months or more very quickly. The only constraint starts to become personnel. How many calls can you take on personally? And then eventually, you'll need someone else to come on board to help you with that. Or maybe you don't want to do that yet. And maybe you're like, instead of bringing on more salespeople, I'm going to take my price to $7,000. So I actually don't need as many clients for the same revenue. So therefore, you can have twice as many clients and make twice as much revenue just by pulling the lever of price. But when you don't have these types of numbers, you don't really know what buttons to push or what levers to pull. But now you do. And this is how you scale a business from the math perspective to more than $1 million in revenue. If you've enjoyed this video, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you want to see more stuff like this, happy to do so. If it's a little bit too cerebral, that's okay, let me know as well. Nonetheless, hit the subscribe button while you're here. I've got hundreds of other videos to help you build an awesome health coaching business that impacts more lives and allows you to live a beautiful life in the process. Do you know the one number that can double your business? In fact, that has nothing to do with getting more clients or raising your prices. In fact, what I'm going to show you here is lowering this one metric can double your coaching business this year.